Well, we've got some hand histories for you guys, and David's going to help us out with the first one. But very much appreciated the first segment of this interview. Loved your answers on everything, so thank you so much for coming. And looks like Ryan's already got it up.
All right.
We are ready to rock and roll here. So yeah, we're gonna go over a couple hands today. First one we'll have David on to help us with. We are playing 2-5 live. This game is probably my favorite. There's 3 casinos that are close to me. This one's my favorite. It's a 1K cap. And I'm usually in for the max, but obviously dwindled down to 800 here, and that's where we're starting from. 800 effective. Under the gun folds. We are here under the gun 1 with king queen offsuit and opt to open from +1 to 25. I think under the gun may have actually limped because I don't know why I would have opened to 25, but that's pretty much the standard open is 20 or 25 at this table. It's a pretty generic loose passive table. There's nobody really on here that I looked at was like, oh, that guy's scary, The guy who is our main opponent in this is like a middle-aged, pretty tight reg. I hadn't seen him do anything out of line before or after this that was particularly ridiculous. He was just slightly loose passive pre-flop, and I didn't really see him get out of line post. And I think he's going to be our only caller in this situation. Oh, we got a call from the small blind as well. So we're going 3 ways to the flop, and we flop an open ender on Jack 10 for rainbow, and action checks to us. I think it sucks to be in between with a draw. I think like that's something that I've learned, or that I've learned a lot about recently, is that like places that it's really great to have a draw. It's great when you're in position. And when you can bet a flop like this, if you're on the button, and then if your opponent calls, they're probably likely naturally going to check to you on a turn, and you can evaluate, decide if you want to check back, what have you. Being in between here, I think it makes it a little bit more interesting. My sizing, I go with 25. I go small. Interested to see what you guys think about this. It's a very dynamic board. Like, it's going to change, It's very likely that top pair is going to change. Very likely that we're going to get some kind of backdoor flush draw on the turn. Should I be going a little bit larger on this board, or do you think that's fine for the texture?
So just in general, in like multi-way pots, the big thing you'll see that you'll want to do is you'll use a lot of small sizing. So I actually like your small size here. Just because you're going the multi-way nature of it, you're not going to use a lot of big bets for the most part. Also, without a flush draw out there, it's still a wet board. You still have Jack 10, but if I'm betting basically a third here, a ton, which is basically what you do. I think just like a general thing too, you want to think about as far as what hands you're betting and not betting. I think this fits in as a really good bet. In general, you're gonna do a lot of checking on these like multi-way boards. And even if like, let's say this is like a Jack 10 for the flush draw, you can check hands as strong as aces, especially when you're deeper like this, because your stack off threshold changes. Whereas when you're playing like 100 big blinds deep, like you're more willing to get in some hands. But overall, like with this specific hand, I definitely like the bet, and I like the size too.
Yeah, I think the crux of that comes from, like, for instance, a hand like Ace King is probably a much better check here than King Queen, because you have Ace High and you have, I guess the nut no pair in that scenario. So with King Queen, if you get an Ace High to fold, you are immediately printing by getting that Ace High to fold, thus making it a slightly more profitable bet. Does that make sense? Am I butchering that entirely?
Sounds good to me.
Well said.
So we bet 25. We get raised. A little 3x from the mid-age tight reg, and the small blind folds, and it's back on us. So in spot, what I'm thinking about is I immediately just do my price. So, I'm calling 50 here to win 180. So I'm getting like more than 3.5 to 1. So in theory, I have to have, 4.5 to 1 to make a call here in terms of equity. So, what I got to have 22% equity, something like that. And I think I have that because we're open-ended, right? It's a dry flop. It's a rainbow flop. So all 8 of my outs to my straight are effectively open, right? I'm not going to turn a heart and have an issue here. So with 8 effective outs and 2 cards to come, 8 times 4, which is the simple math to figure out your equity.
And we could have more than that too, obviously. If he's raising with Ace Jack, or King Queen could be live.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm just starting with these as easy math. And so, 8 times 4 is 32. So you immediately have enough equity there. And like Bryce is saying with 2 overs here, like he can have things that are overs with backdoor draw. You know, is he good enough to maybe have ace 5 of clubs here to do this with? I don't know if he mixes that much in. I think he might be a little bit too straightforward for that. So I was a little wary of this raise, but and especially its sizing. It was very, very small, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too in these spots. So like you have middle-aged tight reg. My experience playing, like I played a lot of live for like 4 years, even though now I've played very little in the last 2 years. I think a general thing I notice is you get raised way less frequently live. So like more or less like when you get raised live, it's way more towards the strong hands. So for example, like online, like you just have a pure continue. Your specific hand here is pretty easy, but like you can start getting some pretty tight folds versus certain people live because it's like they just have 2 pair plus every time. There's no flush draw even for them to have. So it's like he just has Jack 10 suited. He has a set of 4s. Also like pre-flop, I think versus like this player type online, you're maybe more likely to see people 3-bet jacks and 10s pre, like at a higher frequency. Whereas like I think he's going to be pretty heavy based on this read with like jacks and 10s. So he still has a lot of sets that you maybe wouldn't have otherwise. But I think like going forward, like it gets to be really tough if you end up hitting a king or queen, honestly, in this spot. But like obviously if you hit your straight, it's like makes your life easier. And also when they're so valuated here, it's like you're more likely to get paid, right? So if you hit your straight, your implied odds are actually better because they're more likely to have a strong hand that's going to stack off versus you too.
Yeah, you know, if an ace rolls off, it is, I guess it's somewhat disguised. I would get, especially to someone who has that player profile, who I don't think is like super good and well studied. They're not going to look at that ace and immediately be super terrified.
Yeah,
exactly. Could be the case, but
they don't raise often, but if they do go with it, like they're just not folding.
So you're getting stacks in.
So when you're talking about finding those sort of tight folds here, are you talking about like king jack of diamonds here with no backdoor is something that you would just consider folding to this raise?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to depend on people. Like, I mean, you could even king jack with the backdoor. Like, it just really depends on the opponent. Which I mean, it sounds absurd because like you're going to have outs, but the problem is like you're out of position, and then it's just like you're folding so often. And realistically, like if you have king jack and his range just consists of 2 pair plus, like it's so
you're toast.
You're toast, and out of position too. Like even if you hit your backdoor flush, like for whatever reason,
how are you going to get paid?
They'll have a set and they'll just always check back. Where even though it's the backdoor flush draw coming in, so like it's also harder to get paid. So like you would start folding king jack, whereas like here online, like I can't fold king jack backdoor flush draw ever. Like you know.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so but I think it would be a consideration. But like we said, all this talking, like your hand is a pretty pure continue here.
Yeah. Right. So we put in the call after all that. And the turn is we make top pair on the turn. And I think naturally we're putting in a check here, full rainbow board. I'm really expecting our opponent to take a nice, good, chunky bet sizing here. Yeah. I'm expecting pretty big to try to stack off, get low SPR by the river. And he surprises me and he checks back.
Give me that free card.
And I'm like, fantastico. Let me see that river. The river is a brick 6.
Pure check.
Yeah, never, ever, didn't even consider, fathom, none of the above did I think about leading this river. I just don't think it's a good idea. And we have to put in the check here, and he fires.
I have a question. Yeah, I do have a question on this one. So, do you use any block betting in your ranges here? Like, would you ever block for like a third pot here? With not necessarily this hand, but I'm just saying, if it ever goes check, do you ever block a third here on the river with any part?
That's a really good question.
Yes, absolutely at some frequency. Totally depends on the profile given.
What hands would you do that with? Just out of curiosity. That's what I'm trying to think about.
Yeah, so like on this spot here, I mean, it kind of depends how you look at your opponent. So again, like I'm going very like player dependent here. So in these spots, again, like I think that you can consider block folding because they're just never going to exploit you. So like kind of the benefits here is like, let's say he ended up doing this with like, even if I don't think he has tons of king jack, ace jack, jack 10, he's going to have like, if he does have some here, and if you bet like a third pot, like say you bet like 75 or $80 into 230, like he's just going to call those down and you get value. The nice thing too is like if you block and get raised, this player type just doesn't have bluffs. Like,
right.
So if they raise you, you can kind of just fold in, even though and like instinctively the studying you've done, you're like, oh my gosh, they can exploit me. They could just raise me all the time here. It's like this player type's not going to do that. Like if we're just being honest.
Yeah, that's to be honest with you, that's exactly what I was thinking about in game in this moment. Yeah. Was I think part of the reason why I insta checked this was that I was like in my mind, like the only real semi bluff that he had on the flop was 8-9, it was 8-9, and it just got there, you know, on the turns. Like that was my immediate concern. So that's really interesting though, because I think that would protect me from what ends up happening here, because he ends up taking a really big chunky sizing. So I love that idea.
What
I
the
love
heck?
that idea of betting out here for like 50 or 75 to get him to call off with the king jack or something that blocks the straight that would check back otherwise. That's the part people don't understand. Like when they're block betting, they're like, oh, like I have a jack here, I'm just going to block bet because I have a marginal hand. Like, no, like this is a spot where you block bet because your opponent might call your block bet with worse.
Yeah.
But they would check it back if you checked it to them. Like that's the spot where you block bet. And I didn't even think about that, but that's super interesting.
So there are sometimes you're like, obviously you are going to value on yourself a lot here, right? Like he's going to still have 2 pairs. I mean, sometimes
he's going to have sets. He's going to have lots of things.
Sometimes he's trying to be tricky with ace king. I mean, I would have to guess, obviously I guess it's going to be a lot of like 2 pair sets here, but I think that you can realistically, again, you're going to value on yourself, but again, you lose much less. And because this player, like the thing is, like I think people need to understand with theories, like you need to understand it, but then if your opponent's not following it, you need to make deviations to
deviate. Yeah, throw that shit out the window because it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's like if you're playing like live 1-2 or against like a live 2-5 guy, like you're going to print money by playing quote unquote GTO. Again, no one plays it perfect, but if you're trying to play the strategy, but like realistically finding exploits against people, you're going to make more money, which is the goal at the end of the day. So like, I think in this spot, I would probably block like 75, $80. So basically like a third, and then I would fold if he raises.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a tough spot now for you when he bets 200. I would say you probably just have to fold here. Because again, like what bluff doesn't have something now? But it's a miserable spot. Like who likes to fold top pair on the river when turn goes check, check? I mean,
I think you just have to.
Yeah, I think you just have to
call Ryan.
Yeah, no, I ended up. I think I made the biggest mistake of this hand was I threw in a call at the end because that was the thing. He ended up having the set of fours. He bought a set of fours because that was my biggest thing was like how I didn't think that given that player profile that he would be so tight that he would check back a set of fours on the turn. You know, so I was like, I was starting to take away a couple of like those big, thick value combos when I shouldn't have. Like, this is a player profile who can sandbag. They can absolutely sandbag a set of fours when the queen comes because they're just scared of the bad beat. They're scared of me having 8-9. They're scared of me having ace king. So I think that's where I got a little lost in my own thought process.
Yeah, and I think too, like this player type that you're against, like the thing you have to realize is usually the thing is they call too often and they don't value bet thin enough, right? So like for him with a set of fours here, like you can definitely make arguments. I mean, super deep, like maybe you can try to justify checking back fours because like you're gonna have ace king in range. You can have 9-8 suited backdoor flush draw. Now, to be fair, I don't think he's thinking like this based on the player type you've given.
Yes,
but like, I think what he's thinking is, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of ace king. I check. Is probably a lot of it. So.
And then I appreciate it. Just goes for it. Yeah, well, appreciate your thoughts on this, David. And once again, thank you so much for the interview portion of this. We thought your insight was invaluable, and we will definitely plug all your content in the link at the bottom of the description. But thank you so much again for coming. I definitely have some questions after this. I'll hit you up about.
Yes.
But thank you so much for coming on.
All right, sounds great. Thanks for having me, guys. Really enjoy your guys' podcast. You're doing a good job, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Good luck on the grind.
Appreciate that, man. Talk to you.
So I think Ryan we'll probably do 1 or 2 more hands here. Are these from your recent live sessions or are they viewer submissions?
No, these are still. And I have a couple of ones that
are wrecked in all of these hands.
No, we don't get wrecked in all of them. Okay, to be fair, we will hopefully get to one where I do something that's not terrible. So, because the first 2 are pretty quick, and we're gonna try to do them relatively quickly.
All right, let's knock out 2.
So yeah, we have black aces here, $800 effective under the gun 1.
20,
we open 220 standard. Guy immediately to our left who is the fish at the table. Kind of an awkward looking middle-aged guy who's just very, very splashy. 3 bets me to 60. I'd seen him 3 bet a lot. Interesting hand. Relax, okay. Older home game rank. This guy, love this dude. Love this dude. This guy he's the homie. One of the nicest people. Great to have at your table. He like recruits for local home games a lot at the casinos. That's what I see him do.
That's quite illegal.
Yeah, looky, but
love the poaching.
He's also the homie. I opt to put in the 4 bet here. I go to 180. I guess you could go a little bit bigger.
Yeah, like 220.
220, because then you're really just like we're obviously trying to get the money in on decent flops. So I think going a little bit bigger makes it a little bit easier to get the money in on the flop. So
Yeah.
I think in the spot with
And
specifically
you might just get 2
aces,
calls.
yeah, I think in the spot with specifically aces, I wasn't really thinking about driving anybody out necessarily, but I was like, how do I get the most money in the pot here? I think 200 still would accomplish the exact same thing. So not super mad. And we do actually end up getting called in both spots.
Not shocked.
Flop 9-7 deuce complete rainbow.
Okay, if you have 9 or 7s, nice hand.
Action starts on me. What is your bet sizing here? Because we have 620 back. The pot is 547. So
we just bet small jam turn. It doesn't really matter what your sizing is that much. I'd probably size like 150. Yeah, it's fine.
Hey, nice. Okay, I'm actually very happy with that because this was something that I was curious about. Was like what
down
was
bet
this?
Jam.
Yeah. That was my plan. I was like, bet here, get a call from Jacks, 10s, Queens. They have no shot of not getting the money on the turn. Our dear friend, the Massive Fish, folds, and the older home game reg ships it on us.
Oh, that's pretty sick. I mean, nice hand.
Right. And I think
I'm not folding. He has
that's where I had to struggle. Yeah, that's really where I struggled, was that I was like, okay, it's 4, I did this analysis pretty quick in my head because I basically called him. Exactly. I basically snap called here because it's 445 to call to win 1342. So I'm getting 3-1 on a call here with aces on the swap. Right. But that is really the interesting thing, because if we go back to pre-flop, he cold calls a 3-bet on the button versus under the gun 1, and then he overflats a 4-bet. So I think he has
he could easily have kings or queens here.
You think?
I mean, the fact that he flatted pre, he should be bumping it up, but he could be trying to trap with kings, in which he just gets in. I mean, yeah, frequency isn't crazy, but I've seen older players like just flat with jacks, queens, or kings. They haven't overheard to a board and they just get it in. So like, I absolutely could see him having 9s or 7s too, and he has an amazing price that he just set mines for. He absolutely could. I think easily half the time we're beat here, but like we can't fold.
Right, because that's the thing. I mean, even if we are beat half the time here, right, we're getting 3-1. I just think it's right. Like, and that's, I said in real time, I snap called, and then when I got in the car, like, because this was the last bullet, I was like, maybe I should have done that. But right, and then I went back and I thought about it.
He's got 9s.
No, I think he ends up he has deuces.
Oh, yuck!
Which is even crazier. Like I didn't expect deuces. I thought he had 7s or 9s. I was like. Yeah. I mean, I said you have a set. Called him,
Deuces never lose. You just can't fold.
Okay. That's fine. This is what I'm saying. Like, this is part of being in a downswing. Sometimes, a lot of the time, there's way more combinations of 10s, queens, and jacks and kings, like you said, that with this player profile are going to get it in like this. And so, maybe even a third of the time, maybe even more than a third, he's going to have a set. But I just don't think you can ever fold.
I agree. You agree? Let's do one more hands for you guys.
Kabam! Got another quick one for you. This one I played night before. Yeah, night before last. Good old 1-2. Young beginner. I know he's a beginner because he's a 10 chip stacker. Opens to 8 here off of 342. It's so beautiful. There were 3 of them at this table. I was like, oh, it's open season, baby. Give me that money. Middle-aged bad reg who recently was talking about how he just broke up with his girlfriend and hasn't left the casino since. He calls that on the button, and it's here on the big blind. Are you squeezing here?
No. At some frequency, given the middle-aged bad reg, but considering the hijack, I also think I'd look to live reads a lot here. Like I would just look at the player and see if he looks strong. Like the live reads are just like too easy, I would say, and like you can tell when they wake up with a massive hand. And if he looks like a little nervous, like you like even reach for chips or something. I mean, I'm not the type of person who does that. And then you put it in. I'm not the type of person. I'll literally just look at the guy and I'll just like lie detector him and just like
the guy sitting directly to my right and during this session was another one of the 10 chip stackers, and he would shake like a leaf whenever he would bet. It
doesn't matter what he has.
Just shaking. I mean, it was kind of funny to watch. Like, I remember when I did that too. But I do actually opt to put in the squeeze here. I go to 40.
I don't dislike it.
I mean, right. And I think I might be doing this a little too. Maybe I'm doing this a little too often. I think this, like you said, like I think this should be a partial And I looked at the hijack young
Oh, it's
beginner.
definitely a partial. You can't do this
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, you can't do this 100%. I think I may have also done this because I hadn't been involved in a hand in some time.
Yeah.
So in terms of table dynamics, I thought, hey, I haven't played a hand in a while, and I've 3-bet this table a lot, and I've been with it a lot. So, I looked at hijack, thought I could maybe get through. It doesn't.
Sure.
He immediately, not immediately, but he calls, and our middle-aged bad red calls. So we're going 3 ways. Not the best outcome with ace jack suited. We flop 2 pair, top and bottom on ace king jack. 2 spades. We have a backdoor nut club draw, and action's on us again. So 121 in there, 275 back. So you got a little.
What do you go, like 75, 70?
Yeah, you are on point, my friend. Yeah, I think this is probably perfectly fine size. And
yeah,
we
get a little bigger. Oh wow!
So the hijack ships it on us. It folds back to us. And this one was probably even grosser. I mean, it's just like, how can I fold 2 pair here? Because I guess at the end of the day, like,
there's a lot of bad 1-2, 1-3 players who just put it in with flush draws. They just see a flush draw and put it in. I mean, I don't think that's what this guy's doing. I mean, considering he's a young kid, probably cares about his money, stacks of tens. This guy probably has queen 10, ace king. And as Sam Clark says, queen 10 never loses. So like, this kid could easily have queen 10.
Yeah. I guess it.
I don't like it. Oh, this is a gross spot. I don't think I'm finding a fold in game. I just don't.
Right, because I mean, we do. Yeah, and even in the situation where he does have something like that, like, we still have outs.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. We don't think he has aces, kings, and we block jacks. Like, we're not dead.
Yeah,
and he can have flush
that's
draws.
the thing is, like, the thing that really swayed it for me was, like, when I was thinking back about this spot, I was like, can he ever have a hand like ace queen with like the queen of spades and just go off here because he has top pair and a gut shot, and he'd just like stack off with that hand in a 3-bet pot? I was like, maybe not, but that was one of the hands that I think I thought about a lot in time. It was like ace queen or king queen would be something that he might just ship it in here with. But I put in the call, and he does have ace king, which you see a lot of this. Like, in reality, in real life, in the world, this should be he should be 4-betting this pre-flop.
I remember your story about this hand now too.
I just, like, this is something you have to be careful of at the small and mid stakes. Is super passive play pre-flop means that when your opponents call your raises pre, they are not uncapped. Or I'm sorry, they are not fully capped. Right?
Yes,
like, you can't just take out ace king, especially ace king. Like, that's one thing you have to be super wary about is live players, ace king off. They just, they're terrified of it because they have no idea what to do with it post flop. Obviously here, very easy hand to play post flop when you flop 2 pair versus 2 pair, but
absolutely. I mean,
good for him. I'm happy I pumped up his bankroll and he had a giant mountain of 10 chips.
Good for that guy. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode. This was
wait a minute, Bryce. Before you do that, exit. There we go. Now do it. Now go ahead. I'm sorry.
There we go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It was a great episode with David. Be sure to check out all of his content. It's amazing. And he pushes out so much content every single week. It's crazy how much that guy does. He's an absolute grinder. Make sure to follow him. And if you guys have any recommendations for people you want to see, feel free to DM me, DM Ryan, DM All In Poker Podcast, and make sure to send your hand histories in as well. We love reading those and we love featuring those. Any closing thoughts, Ryan?
No, that's about it. Thank you, David, so much for coming on. It really has been a pleasure. I've been watching his content for a very, very long time, like since like the early pandemic days. So it was really a pleasure to have him on.
Yeah, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.